what's wild is National Lampoon's Vacation just still holds up to this day. I just watched it again, and it's still so beloved. Why do you think that it's resonated, beyond generations and, is still just as fun 40 years later?
Because we all have families, and families have stories, and families have things that go wrong. And Vacation is like the quintessential family, American family, that has gone wrong, but yet survived and eventually had a great time. And so when we go on our family vacations, and now that it's summer, people will have their stories. And I do Comic Cons, and fans come up to me and tell me their horrible stories. And I've written a book, 40 Years on Vacation, that will be coming out soon. And I've collected their stories, and there's some stories in the book, just because they're such great stories. Their tragedy, their family tragedy about their vacation, like Vacation. So that's why I think it resonates, because it was the 80s, and there was like a nostalgia that people have, and they look back going, oh, I remember my dad was bugging me so much when I was on that trip and we couldn't do anything. And yet, but I loved my dad, and yet I loved that vacation, even though at the time it stunk. So,
Yeah, for sure. Can't wait to read your book. And Chevy Chase was just in top form in this movie. What
yes.
stood out about just working with him and getting to see that top-notch comic timing on display?
Well, mind you, I was a teenager, and Anthony Michael Hall, we call him Michael, was very up on who was who. Back then, it's like, oh, Eddie Bracken, John Candy, Imogene Coca, like all these great stars. And I'm like, duh. And he schooled me all the time. And mind you, I don't know if you remember, Anthony Michael Hall was also on Saturday Night Live eventually. And I wonder, I never asked something that I can ask him. We're still very close. Did he do Saturday Night Live because of Chevy being, on the shoot or not? I don't know. So he was on the top of his game. It was fun because we'd be driving through a town, and he would roll down the window and goes, hey, I'm Chevy and you're not. I mean, I guess that was his signature thing that he would do all the time. But being a young kid, I'm like, ooh, uh-oh, is that okay? It was fine. It was fun.
That's very fun. And you mentioned Anthony Michael Hall, and in this movie, you just have such a great rapport together. You're playing off each other back and forth. How was it establishing that sort of relationship? Because you really feel like siblings throughout.
We did. That's very, very good to note that, because at that time, our audition scene was a sibling rivalry fight. He's like, Rusty's eating peanut butter cups and stuck all over his teeth, whatever. And we would fight back and forth. And during the film, when he was 14 and I was a little older, and I was supposed to be the older sister, he became the older brother because he grew by the end. He was much taller by the end. But anyway, we did have that rapport, and we're still very close. He lives 7 minutes from where I am. And I mean, literally just last week we hung out. So we're still very, very close. But there's that, it was just a natural rapport with everybody in the cast. It was magical. It was so much fun.
And that's awesome. I love that you're both still close. And then my last question for you. So much of this was filmed in the car. What stood out about filming in such an enclosed area?
I don't have issues with claustrophobia or anything. When you asked me that, there's a certain smell. Mind you, we did a vacation on vacation, so we traveled a lot, and there's different cars that we had depending on the shot, but it all had this kind of interesting, like, desert dusty smell, and it squeaked a little bit. I don't know if you can hear in the original one. It's always like, like, so you got to listen for that squeak that it has naturally. So the truckster was his own character in itself. It was kind of like our Millennium Falcon, in Star Wars. It was kind of our star vehicle.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your
Well,
time
thank you.
today. And the movie's fantastic. So
I
congrats.
appreciate that. Thank you.